Mahaveer, as we know, had 27 lives. Now it's interesting to know that when we say that he had 27 lives, what does that mean? Because essentially Jains believe that our soul has no beginning, it has got no end. So where does the question of counting lives start from? Anyone? Yeah?
The fortune lives, like when he got in touch with somebody, things or...
He got in touch with?
No, after he got a samkhya.
Yeah, okay, that's a word. So the idea is that samyak tua. So you start counting lives when the soul starts getting samyak tua, which is the right belief. So that's the right belief. So until then, our soul has been going through infinite cycles of birth and death. So that's infinite. So there's no question of counting how many births they've had. But it's a question of the time, the moment that the seed of the right faith has been sown, that's when the journey begins. So that's when you say, okay, now the path to moksha has begun. So for Bhagavan Mahavir, that was 27 births. So we'll look through some of his past lives, because I think it's interesting to know that to know anyone's character, you have to actually look through the past. It's even true today. So if you have to apply for a job, they look at your CV and look at your past, what have you done in the past. So it's also important to understand Lord Mahaveer, to look at his past lives. So his first life was life as Naisar. Now who was Naisar? Naisar was actually in the court, working in the court of the king. And once the king said, I want to actually build my palace up and I want sort of a lot of wood for construction of building my palace. So he told Naisar, who was probably one of the chief persons working there, says, Naisar, why don't you go with a team of people, go to the forest and start collecting wood. So Naisar went to the forest, but Naisar actually had one vow which he had taken. And the vow was that I would like to feed someone before I actually eat my meal. So after the people have started cutting the wood, he's just sitting there for his lunch. So he's now thinking, what should I do here? I've got a vow here. And as he's thinking, contemplating, he sees some people walking down. Remember, he does not know what their Jains are. They were essentially Jain monks, but he does not know who they are. For him, for all intents and purposes, they are strangers. Strangers walking through the forest, and he looked at them and thought that they seemed a bit confused or lost in the forest. So he approaches them and asks them, is there any way I can help you? So, and the monks said, yes, we were actually going from one town to the other town, we've lost our way, and we'd be very grateful if you could sort of walk us out of this forest. But he says, that's fine, but meanwhile, why don't I offer you some food, because you seem to be hungry because we are lost in the forest. So the monks took some food, and they were quite grateful, and then the monk said, we are very grateful to you, we don't carry any possessions, so how can we sort of pay our gratitude towards you? He says, and what he then actually said was that I'll actually walk you out of the forest, I'll help you, I'll guide you through walking out of the forest. So he actually takes him towards the edge of the forest and says, now this is the town you want to go to, please carry on with the journey. So the monks then says, we are very grateful to you, but in return, just as the way you took us out of the forest, we would like to give you some pieces of advice to take you out of this cycle of birth and death. He says, oh, okay, that seems a bit profound. And so the monks gave him some guidance as to, what is religion about in a brief way. So here it is, and the monks went their own way. Now, he obviously has heard some pearls of wisdom from these monks. So whenever he's got his free time and he's sitting there, he's contemplating, what did they tell me about it? And he's constantly thinking about those words. Obviously, he's in a good frame of mind, and when he dies, he dies with a sort of, again, a very good frame of mind, and he's born in the Devlok. I think this is also quite important to know that when you read the Jain scriptures, it's very, time and again, the moment of death is very important for all of us. And I think essentially, for us, we are all in a way preparing for death, that we are all hoping to have a good death. And what that means is that essentially you want to have in a state of good thoughts. It's a similar story for Parshvanath Bhagwan. There were two snakes, they were dying, and Parshvanath Bhagwan recited some Naukar mantra, and they obviously were born as Padmavati and Dharendra. So this is actually quite important, that sort of having good thoughts or reciting prayers at the time of death. So what do we learn from Naisar's story? That the seed was sowed in his first life, and the seed was compassion. At that time, it was not that I'm a follower for Jainism. It was a moral or humanistic value of just compassion to any beings. So that was his underlying ethos, which then made him introduced to some Jain monks. So the first and foremost, it does not matter what religion we belong to. It's a question of compassion and all the moral and humanistic values. And those are common to anyone. It doesn't matter, it's no caste, color, creed or religion. And so that essentially sowed him the seed of Samyaktva. So that is when the seed was sowed in. Because when we mean by Samyaktva, in very simple and plain basic language, what it means is, it can be also very complex, but the belief of soul, that yes, I am a soul, the soul migrates from one birth to the other, so we do not believe in a kind of there's one kind of creator God, that the soul keeps on evolving. So that's a fundamental premise, that I'm a soul, I'm not the body, and the soul keeps on migrating, and the whole goal is kind of the getting to moksha, and tied into that would come the theory of karma. So first life was as Naisar, second life in Devlok, now the third life is Marichi. This is a very important life because here he is born, and can you imagine that he's born as a grandson of Lord Rishabdev. So here, Bhagwan Mahaveer's soul is actually the grandson of Lord Rishabdev, the first Tirthankar. And his father is Bharat Maharaj. And Bharat, as we know, is the Chakravarti. So he's the son of Lord Rishabdev. And Chakravarti, as we saw last week, means a universal monarch. So both in itself, amazing credentials. Imagine you telling, or your kids telling, that my father is a universal monarch, and my grandfather is actually a Tirthankar, who is a very eminent saint or a god. I mean, I think there's nothing which can beat that kind of credentials in a family. So at that time, Bharat Maharaj actually went to Lord Rishabdev's assembly and asked a casual question, because Rishabdev had already got Kevalgan. He said, and he's asking his father, he says, Rishabdev, is there anyone in our assembly here, or in this town here, who will actually go to moksha? And Lord Rishabdev says, Bharat, don't worry, your own son, my grandson, he is going to go into moksha, and he's going to be the 24th Tirthankar. And obviously Marichi heard that. And since he heard that, his pride knew no bound. And his pride was, look at my family clan, look at my Gotra. Gotra is one of the 8 karmas. When Jains, we believe in the 8 karmas, Gotra, or the lineage, or what lineage you belong to, is one of the karmas. So there he actually had that pride. What? I mean, look at my family clan. My father is a universal monarch, my grandfather is a Tirthankar. You know, who can beat this? And that pride really grew on him. However, he had also some positivity within him, and he then decided to become a monk. So he became a monk in Lord Rishabdev's assembly. Now, as he's progressing through life, he then decides that this monkhood of Jainism is too tough. I really can't cope with all this, you know, fasting, and they've got some very strict rules. So as he's going along, he passes through a stream, and he says, look, I fasted for so many days, I've not even got a water to drink. This path is too difficult. You know, what harm is there in drinking water? It's nature, you know, if I'm thirsty, I've got a human body, and drinking. So he says, you know what, I've taken some vows, but you know, I might as well relax some of these vows, and I'll start drinking water. So he started relaxing some of the vows there. As he's going along, he then thinks, you know, what's going to happen when I become old age? He had got some illness, he was not keeping too well. So he says, as a monk, who's going to look after me? I mean, when I was in the palace, there were lots of people looking after me. So he says, me wandering in the forest all alone, this is really doing me no good. So he said, I think I should have a disciple, someone who can look after me. So he actually gets someone convinced and says, you know, I think this path, which Lord Rishabdev is saying is 2 paths, let us just, you know, there are certain elements which are quite good, so let us then follow one path. We'll make our own, we'll bend the rules. We'll try to do the religion in what suits us best. So, and that's what he started to do. So here, his Samyaktva in a way is actually, he's in a partial state. So Samyaktva could be there, could not be there, or could be in a mixed state. He believes in certain things, he doesn't believe in certain things, and he's now following his own path. And so here you can see that this is now the beginning of his downfall. in spite of having Lord Rishabhdev as a Tirthankar. So, what did he do? He changed his dress code. So, from wearing white monk clothes, he then decided to wear orange clothes. So, that was one way of distinguishing himself, that I don't belong to the monks of Lord Rishabhdev. I'm now got my own following. He had some laxity in rules and he lost his samyaktva in his first life. So, the biggest root of his downfall was pride. So, the first life was compassion, such compassion which took him to the heavens. The third life, pride, immense pride, which is leading to his downfall. Then he goes through a number of births, 5th birth, 6th birth, 7th births. He's born as a Brahmin, sort of a greedy Brahmin. He's born again in the Devlok, again as a Brahmin. So he goes through quite a number of births. Eventually we come to his 18th birth, which is known as the Triprishta Vasudeva. And in fact, incidentally, I didn't mention it last week, this is the birth when Lord Shantinath, his soul, was actually related to Mahavir in this birth. They were Bhanej, Mama Bhanej. So like he is like a Mama. So Shantinath Bhagwan's soul and Bhagwan Mahavir's soul in this 18th birth were related in some way. Okay, so before we go there, let's look at his 16th life. He's here born as a Prince Vishwabhuti. And what once happens is that his cousin betrays him. So obviously because they are staying in a kingdom, there's always a kind of conflict between brothers or cousins and who is going to get the kingdom and this internal rivalry. So his cousin betrays him, which then meant that Prince Vishwabhuti, which is Mahavir Bhagwan's soul, had to leave the city. So with his family, so they had to migrate from that place. In anger, what does the Prince Vishwabhuti does? He actually hits a tree very hard and all the fruits of the tree fall down in that anger. I think that's also quite common here in this day and age, because when we get angry, we do sometimes bang certain things, so you don't have the power to retaliate, but you would vent out your frustration, your anger in some other way. So here he's actually kicking a tree, all the fruits fall down, and he's thinking in his mind that, you know, I've got such a power that if I can bring the fruits of this tree down, that this power of mine will one day bring you down, telling his cousin that, you know what, that I've got such a power. But as he's going along, these people are also very special. And at that time, he must be thinking that, you know, this anger of mine against my cousin is just too much. And as time went on, he then decided to become a monk. He says, you know, there's always certain trigger points in certain people's lives which then makes them take sainthood or make turn a course of life. So he actually became a monk at that stage. He said, you know, this world is just fruitless. You know, my brother was fighting for the kingdom, and here he is, and you know, because of all this rivalry, I had to go out with my family, and he then decided to become a monk. So during one period, he did lots of fasts, 1 month fast, Mashkaman, which is quite common in India, even in this day and age, especially during pollution. A lot of people fast for 1 month. I mean, 8 days in itself is a feat, but there are a lot of people who actually do 1 month fast, Mashkaman. And his body became quite lean. So after 15 births, he's now getting his samyaktva again. He's become a monk, he's doing a lot of spiritual practices, and he's now getting his right faith back. So after this fast, he comes to Mathura to seek alms. But what happens is, a cow actually hits him and he falls down. And coincidentally, his cousin actually appears to pass by and sees that, this monk of mine, this cousin of mine, look at him, he's become such a weak character, and falls down and makes a mockery of him. Oh, look at you. At one point you were actually having that pride that I was going to be so strong that I'm going to bring you down. Look at you like a weak monk. What strength do you have? So the monk, again, that animosity aroused in him. He says, my cousin is again making fun of me. He forgot that he was a monk. In a state of anger, what he does is, he picks up that cow, which actually put him to the ground, and flings him up in the air, and then the cow, when he comes back, and catches the cow again. Just to show that what kind of power and might he's got. Now the cousin saw this and got worried. Wow, says, this guy's a monk, but he's got an amazing amount of power, and he ran for his life. Says, this guy is not to be mess around with. And what's happening to Prince Vishwabhuti as a monk? he then decided that because the animosity again aroused in his mind, he says, let the power of all the penances which I have done, let the benefit, the fruits of all the penances which I have done be such that I am going to destroy my cousin once. Can you imagine? So that does not mean if you become a monk, all these kashais have gone away. So, we can have our sadhus and sadhvis, but the four main kashais, krodh, man, maya, lobh, they could be there in some form or the other. And that's the reason why, they and us, we all have to work towards eradicating our passions. Similar to, if you remember last week's story of Shantinath Bhagwan, there was a princess, there was a nun who saw that there was a king trying to look after a prince, and she made that vow of, as a Jain nun, that let the benefit of all the tap I've done be such that I can get such beauty that in the future some king or some male can go after me. Because she was really amazed to see that how can someone go at any amount of lengths to go after a female or a princess. So that's called as nidan. Nidan means you have made some decision in your mind, and so this is what the Muni has done. He's now taken a mental contemplation that let the fruits of all which I've done, the positive things I've done, all the tap be such that I'm going to avenge my cousin. So that was not something good which he's done. So he's done something wrong out of something positive which he's done. So in the 18th birth now, this is the birth of Prince Vasudev. Vasudev is again, he's now become a very powerful king of a city. And once some people told him that you don't go towards the mountains, at the mountains there's actually a man-eating lion. And so I think we would suggest that you don't go towards it. You can go free, roam around freely, but just don't go to the mountains. The prince was not going to agree to that. They were very brave. He says, you know what, I can't take that as a challenge. He goes to the mountain and he meets this lion face to face. And his strength is such, he meets this lion and rips upon with his 2 fists and just kills the lion. And this is not very uncommon. I mean, even people from Africa, we've heard stories of the Maasai. I mean, the Maasai tribes, that one of the things of getting into manhood is to fight a lion or some wild animals. So here he is, he's fought a lion and killed him very, very bravely. In his same birth, he's actually, as a king, he's listening to some music. There's all this court of ministers here and they're listening to music. He's enjoying himself. And suddenly he then feels a bit sleepy. So, before when the music was running, he actually tells all the ministers, you know what, please carry on with the music, and when I fall asleep, stop all the music. So they said fine. So he's listening to the music, and as the music is going on, he actually then starts to feel dopey and falls asleep. When he wakes up after a few hours, he's a bit surprised to see that the music is still going on. So he asks his ministers, why is it that the music is still going on? I've given strict instructions that the music should stop. One of the ministers raises his hands up and says, sir, yes, but although you had gone to sleep, we were enjoying the music so much that we just decided to carry on. Here, anger kicks in. You disobeyed my instructions. I'm the king, and you disobeyed me? Who are you? Oh, music is so dear to you. Come here, come here. He calls a few ministers, get molten lead. This minister here, he likes listening to music very much. So what we're going to do is take molten lead and pour molten lead into his ears. Let's see how he's going to enjoy his music. So that was the anger which he had. Such anger that to punish the minister for not obeying his instructions, he's now asking him to take molten lead and pour it. Obviously the minister dies. You can imagine that, in fact I was actually reading a book that when we say Mahaveer, we always think of Mahaveer as a brave soul. And the good things which he did as a Tirthankar. But Mahaveer is literally this birth here, the 18th birth. You really require a very strong soul to commit such heinous crimes. In fact, this is what Mahaveer is. That it does not require, it's not a normal soul. That your anger knew such bounds that this is in a kind of a strange manner a Mahaveer's soul. What a brave soul to commit such heinous crimes. 19th birth in the 7th hell. If we learn the Jain, if you look at the, we believe there are quite a few heavens, Madhvalok. So if you look at Jain cosmology, that there is heavens, there is Madhyalok, and there is Urdhvalok. So we believe, as Jains believe, that there are 7 hells. Each hell increasing in its intensity of pain. So there is nothing more severe or more worse than the 7th hell. So that's the worst, and each hell has got its different, so the intensity of pain. So in the first hell, there'll be no sun. So by definition, all hells, there is no sunlight. It's all pitch darkness. So that's a common theme across all the hells. And then the pain and intensity will keep on increasing as you go from 1 second and all the way to the 7th hell. And again, what it means that your lifespan in these hells will keep on increasing. So in your first hell, it will be this many years and keeps on increasing, and it's sagarotam. So basically in our language, it's infinite kind of, it's uncountable number of years, you know. So that's how much he's gone there in his 19th birth. 20th birth, he's born as a lion. So as you can imagine, he's born in hell he'll be committing many heinous crimes, because one of the basic definition of hell would be they've got Adhignan. Just like Devlok have got Adhignan, people who are born in hells have got Adhignan. Adhignan means that you've got some knowledge of your past lives. And therefore, what would happen is you would remember, you did some harm to me, I'm going to do some harm to you. So it's a kind of a tit for tat relationship that, you know, and that just goes on. So, he's born in the 19th hell, and then after all those heinous crimes, he's now born. There's also one other rule which is said that you cannot have 2 births in hell to hell. So after all that, otherwise then you just keep on, there'll be no end, there'll be no salvation. So after a birth in hell, you have to be born in some other domain, and then perhaps you can go in. But you just cannot have a chain or sequence of what births in the same hells. So he's born as a lion. Then in the 21st birth, he goes in the 4th hell. Then he's born as a human, and then goes on, Priyamitra. And then in the 23rd birth, he's actually again born as a Chakravarti, a universal monarch. He himself becomes a universal monarch. Then in the 24th birth, again, he's born in the Devlok, then Prince Nandan, and then he's again in the celestial world. And the 27th birth, he's now born as Tirthankar Mahaveer. So if you look at this 25th birth, in his 25th birth, he became a Nandan Muni. And he's believed to have done those many mass commands. You have to also bear in mind that we are talking of a time period whereby the lifespans were so long. So one can easily argue that how could he have done over 1 million mass commands? When you read the scriptures, the lifespan of Lord Rushabdev was the highest, then keeps on decreasing to Ajitnath and so on and so forth. So depending on the Greek Jain cosmology, depending on the first era, second era, the third lifespan, the lifespans were huge. It's even believed that the human body had different dimensions, huge sizes. So they were almost like giant characters. And that's one of the reasons why people believe that Lord Rushabdev, when he climbed Palitana, he did 99 times. So he could have been a very huge body, and literally in one step he could have literally gone up the mountain. So he has done so many marsh commands as a Muni, and it is in this birth he actually got his Tirthankar Nam Karma. So that's where he bound this Tirthankar. And they obviously do many things, but what was the overriding criteria which made him bind such a Tirthankar Nam Karma? This is he said, if I have such a power that I can encourage all souls towards religion. So that was a feeling deep down inside him, that I want to have such a power that everyone goes towards spirituality, not only me. And I think this kind of feeling is quite common. I mean, some of us who went a few years ago to Virayatan for the Jatra trip in India, that's the time when we actually met Sadhu Shangamitra. At that time we learned that she was in States, she had a 13-year-old daughter, and she decided to take Diksha. And one of the first questions we all asked her was, how could you sort of, let go of your daughter at 13 years of age and take Diksha? Maybe you could have waited a few more years until she became an adult and then taken Diksha. And she gave the answer in a very brief manner, saying that, taking Diksha or spirituality and renouncing has been at the back of my mind for quite some time. And after discussing with the family, they all gave me the unanimous decision says, Mother, if you really want to do it, it's close to your heart, please go ahead, don't even waste a single day. No one knows what lifespan one has got left. And he says, here you are a mother to me, but once when you become a nun, you're going to become a mother to everyone. And he says, it's that principle that, here my motherhood is not only now going to be meant for my daughter, but my motherhood is now going to be for the entire universe. Everyone is going to be like a child to me. And it is that kind of feeling and compassion how she took the Diksha. So in a similar way, here is Nandan Muni, who is having such benevolent thoughts for the entire world and for all souls. And that's what made him bind the Tirthankar Nam Karma. So now we come towards his last and 27th life. You know, 2,500 years ago, or just over 2,500 years ago, he's born in an area which is known as Kshatriya Kund. And obviously, the kings of that time were followers of Lord Parshvanath, because he was, Parshvanath Bhagwan was just, I think, just 200 or 300 years before Lord Mahaveer. And King Chetak, he was a follower of Lord Parshvanath, and his sister was Trishla. As we know, the Trishla was Lord Mahaveer's mother. There were two main philosophies prevalent at that age. We don't believe, according to the scriptures which I read and some of the literature which I read, that people at those times would not call themselves as Jains. You know, there was no concept at the time of Jain. So the concept at that time was either we belong to the Shramanic view of philosophy, or we belong to the Vedic philosophy. So it was not of I belong to Jain. Those are the two main schools of thoughts where people would fall under. So under the Shraman philosophy would come Buddhists, Jains as we call them now. So there comes under the Shraman. The Vedics are like the Hindus, which we call them right now, the Vedas. And the main difference is that therein was the Vedics believe in creator God, Brahma, someone who has created the world, the universe. There is someone who has created the universe. Shramans believe that there is no creator. Shramans believe in the soul, Atmavadi, and they believe through sadhana, meditation, penance, you know, you want to get rid of your karma and then get towards the vitraga. The Vedic people believe in practices of Sakti and mantra. They believe in powers of goddess and goddesses. There is wind, power, the wind, fire, air. These are all kind of gods, almost like Greek philosophy. The god of water, god of wind. So they believe that nature element has got an immense power. And what they tend to do is that I want to please the gods. That's why I want to do havan. I want to practice certain things. If gods are happy, then they will bestow some benefits to me. So it's that kind of relationship that let's engage in pleasing gods. Whereas the Shramans don't believe in that. You are your own architect, and so therefore there is no question of someone helping you. After Lord Parshvanath's era, so obviously Bhagwan Mahaveer was 200 or 300 years later, society again changes. So imagine there was a very good lot of positivity when Parshvanath Bhagwan was there. Then again the society went into a state of decline. Violence, hatred, enmity, animal sacrifice, downfall of women's status, slavery, subjugation of unequal. So again there was darkness in the society. So when Bhagwan Mahaveer was there, the society was not in a classic benevolent state. There was chaos around, darkness in the society. Lord Mahaveer, again, as you know, that was born in Brahman lady's womb, and then again he was transferred into Trishla Mata. And again, there is some kind of divergence there. This is what the Sutamas believe, Digambaras don't believe in. So there is some kind of discrepancy between the two main sects of Jainism. But essentially, he was born. The Tirthankar's mother sees 14 dreams, and which is our indication of a very great soul being born. And this is actually the place which, when we went into to India, this is the actual temple, the actual location where he was actually born. So this is in Kshatriya Kund. You can imagine a very simple temple with just footsteps there. So there's no murti there, just footsteps designating that this is the location where Lord Mahaveer was born, in Kshatriya Kund. Bhagwan Mahaveer again was born with Avdignan. Avdignan means sort of understanding what's going on outside. So, and when he was in his mother's womb, he realized that by kicking inside his mother's tummy was causing her pain. So he then decided that, why should I cause my mother some pain? So he decided to sort of stop all movements. Now, as all ladies would know, that the mothers would get very worried. Oh, my baby is not moving. Is something wrong? And so she started worrying, Trishla Mata. And here is Bhagwan Mahaveer in a bit of a dilemma. I stopped movement for my mother's happiness, but it has on the contrary made her more worried. I'm trying to do something positive, but this action of mine is actually creating a negative effect. And then he again starts his movements again, just to make his mom happy, because his overriding criteria was to make his mothers happy. He was born in 599 years before BC, so about 600 years before the birth of Christ. And Priyambada, who is a maid, gives the news of the birth of King Siddhartha, and the king gifts her and gives a lot of gifts and tells us you are now free of your slavery, because that time she was like a slave, like a maid. He says, here is some money, you've given me such great news that my son has been born in my kingdom, here you are, you're free to go. Bhagwan Mahavir had many names. His name at the time of birth was Vardhaman, and Vardhaman means increase. So everything was increasing when he was born. Prosperity in the kingdom was increasing, and there was happiness all around. So that's the reason why they called him Vardhaman. He had innate knowledge, so in some scriptures he's also referred to as Saman. He was born in a clan of Nag Kshatriya, so what clan he was born, so he's also called Nagputra. So when you go through scriptures, there are different terms. So if you look at the Buddhist texts, they actually have him mentioning as Nagaputra. And during his long period of sadhana, he was actually called Mahavir. His father was Siddhartha, mother was Trishla. Swetambars believe that he was married and his wife was Yashoda and a daughter called Priyadarshan, but Digambars don't believe in that. They believe that he wasn't married. As a youth, his mother raised a child happily, sattvic diet, and free from mental tensions. I think that's also quite prevalent in today's day and age. If you listen to Shramanijis, and they all quite often say that when we have babies here, you should, when mothers are pregnant, making them listening to the good music, good diet, the seeds actually sown right from that age, rather than even after the birth is done. So that's quite common. And in fact, even it's not only Jains who believe that. I think recently I read an article that in the BBC there was an English lady who was listening to the ABBA music while she was pregnant, and after the baby was born, believe you me, she was an expert in all ABBA music. So that goes to prove that it's not only Jains who believe in that. As a child, when Bhagwan Mahavir was playing, they had some kind of game with all his friends, and whoever touches the tree there, first he becomes a winner, whoever loses, then he has to carry the other friend on his shoulder. And this is the time, we are looking at a period just over 2,500 years ago, whereby Devas and Devis in the heavens would come and start testing. Wow, this kid seems to be quite a brave kid, let's test his strength. And so as they're doing this, so as Bhagwan Mahavir is playing with his friends, this Dev comes here, and when he loses, and the Devs have actually got the power of changing form. So when you are born in Devlok, that's one of the powers which you got, and that's why they call a protean body. So the body, like we got this kind of body, the body which they are born in Devlok is known as a protean body, both in Devlok and in hell also. So those are one of the things of being born in those domains. So as a Dev, he took a disguise of a child, lost, and so Bhagwan Mahavir had to carry him on his shoulder, and the Dev started becoming like a giant. So all the kids ran away and said, what is this going on here? But Bhagwan Mahavir knew and gave a slight nudge of his foot, and the Dev, as a giant, really got hurt and said, this kid is quite special. And he comes down and bows down to Lord Mahaveer and says, I came down from heavens to test you, and you are indeed a brave soul. And that's the time when he's actually called Mahavir. So the name of Mahavir was given by the Dev. He was sent to Gurukul for education like all princes of those day and age. They went to Gurukul, same as you saw in last week's story of Shantinath Bhagwan. And so when he goes to his school, Bhagwan Mahavir asks Acharya, you're teaching me all these other things here, but I actually want to know who I am. Am I this body? What is the purpose of this universe? Why is it here? Why am I here? Everyone seems to be in pain and worry. Is it liberation? Acharya said, this is a school to train the future kings. We teach the art of ruling a kingdom, law and order, economics, warfare. Winning the battle to control one's mind is not in the syllabus. So, the Acharya said that the kind of questions you are asking me is beyond my knowledge, and obviously then Lord Mahavir wasn't interested in schooling. But he obviously had a lot of knowledge, innate knowledge. As time goes on, he now wants to take Diksha, and his parents did not want to give him, says, no, says, do not renounce the world in our lifetime. So he didn't want to displease his parents, so out of respect, he decided, okay, in my parents' lifetime, I will not renounce. After his parents died, he goes to his elder brother and with respect says that I now want to take Diksha. His brother says, you know, this is any insult to injury. Your parents have just died and now you also want to take Diksha. Why don't you postpone by another 2 years? So Lord Mahaveer then again agreed to his brother's wishes, but obviously his state of mind is in a kind of a very, he wants to renounce and spending a lot of time towards self-contemplation. Then time came that he wants to now take Diksha. He, as we know that all Tirthankars at the time of, before taking Diksha, they do a Varsidan. For 1 whole year, they, out of the king's coffers, they just give out all donations to everyone in the kingdom. And it's a, can you imagine, I mean, this is also quite relevant here that, you know, we sometimes have pride of whatever money we've got. I think it's quite important to contemplate that here are princes and kings, you know, having such laps of luxuries and yet to renounce. I think that in itself is something quite important to learn. He takes Diksha, and again the same place in Kshatriya Kun. So there were 2 Kalyanaks in Kshatriya Kun, and this is again the temple. They are almost very close to each other. The place where he was born and the place where he took Diksha. And this is the exact temple which is just what his footsteps. It is believed that his brother is the one who created this temple for Lord Mahaveer in the actual place where he took Diksha. When people take Diksha, obviously, all Lord Mahaveer, there was no kind of formalities when he took Diksha. All what he says, Om Namo Siddhebhya Nama. I bow down to all souls and I want to live a life free of sins. When we even do Samayak, when we do the Samayak, the vow which we take to say that I want to be in Samayak is the Karami Bhante. And incidentally, when we went to the Diksha of Sadi Sangamitraji, out of all the different ceremonies, the defining moment which says now she's now become a Sadhvi is this sutra. Karami Bhante Samayam Savajam Jogam Pachkami Javaniyam Vajuvasami Duvyam Tiviyanam Manenam Vayakayanam Na Karamina Karami Tasapante Padikamami Nindami Garyami Appan Bosirami. It's now taking a vow, I resolve to live in harmony with my soul by renouncing all sinful activities. So when we do Samayak, we are taking this vow to stay like a monk for 48 minutes. When Sadhvi Sanghamitra took this vow, same prayer, same vow, but that was for lifelong. It's a lifelong vow. So it's a simple prayer to say that this is how I want to live my life. Mahavir and the cowherd. Bhagwan Mahavir has taken Diksha. He's standing in meditation in the forest. One cowherd comes there and says, would you mind please looking after my cows? Bhagwan Mahavir is in deep contemplation, silent, does not respond to the cowherd. The cows go wandering around. The cowherd comes back after some time and asks Bhagwan Mahavir, where are my cows? Bhagwan Mahavir is keeping quiet, he's in deep meditation. So the cowherd is getting a bit irritated. After some time, the cows again, he goes around looking for them. After some time, the cows again appear around Lord Mahaveer. And now he loses his temper. He says, Bhagwan Mahaveer is playing tricks with me. He's hiding my cows. I'm going looking around all these places for my cows. And then here, when I come back, the cows are already here. Takes a lash whip and just wants to whip Bhagwan Mahaveer. A dev comes from heavens and then holds the person's hand. Says, do you know what you're doing? This is the Tirthankar Mahaveer. And you want to hit him? And Bhagwan Mahaveer tells the dev, do not protect me here. I have done my own karmas. I have to now repay my own karmas. So, you know, I do not need any protection from anyone. It's me and my soul. And so Bhagwan Mahaveer just showed his strength of character that, you know, whatever pain and whatever, I have to bear it by myself. So the message which we learn from Lord Mahaveer is that the path of self-realization is a journey of the self. My karmas cannot be eradicated by anyone. And this is very, very important because I think it's even in this day and age, a lot of people go to astrologers, and that is quite common in India. That whenever problems strike, you want to go to, and you know, getting guidance from others. It's like in Jainism, we have to have that core belief that my karmas are because of me, and I have to eradicate karmas by myself. As I sow, as I reap. We can seek divine assistance to give us strength, but battles are ours. It says there is power of prayers. You do pray. It says, please give me the strength. But the strength is to fight our own battles, not you know. So there's a slightly different mentality has to be a bit different. When Bhagwan Mahaveer was meditating, once he actually was, as he's going along, he was passing through a place and he says, oh, this is my father's friend. And there was a hermitage there. So he says, why don't you come along and you can spend some time here. So Bhagavan Mahavir is staying in this camp, hermitage, who were his father's friends. And after some time, when his meditation practice is over, he's now moving out. But then the people who were staying in that campsite told him, hey, hold on. He says, what kind of person are you? We wholeheartedly welcomed you into our facility here. And look at what you've done. The birds have actually taken away the thatched roof. You did not look after our place here. What kind of guest are you? Is this what you were taught by in your kingdom? And Bhagavan Mahavir then decided at that stage in time, henceforth, I do not want to have anyone's shelter. He says, my path is a path of purification. When I'm deeply involved in my soul, I do not know what's around me. So how can I take care about the external surroundings? I'm so deeply engrossed in this. And here, when you look at the society is saying that I did not care about this. So it says, from now onwards, I just want to be a free soul. I do not want to be tied down with anyone. I just want to lead an independent life just for the purification of my soul. So the second thing is, he was wandering around. You remember that he had a 1 year of Varsidan. So at one point, there was an old man. When he went home, his wife said, look at it. Everyone in the city got some donation when Bhagavan Mahavir was giving something. Look at you. You did not even get anything from Bhagavan Mahavir. So why don't you do this? Why don't you go to Bhagavan Mahavir and actually ask him if he can give you something? Because everyone else managed to get something. So here is an old man approaching Lord Mahavir saying, I'm one person who did not get anything whilst you were giving the donations. Can you give something to me? And here is Lord Mahavir, out of compassion, says, I've got nothing now. I don't have all those golds and everything which I had when I was in the kingdom. Only thing which I have now is a piece of cloth. Here I give it to you. So that compassion was if you come to us for something, here, it's yours. Yeah, I think I just mentioned all this. The world doesn't understand the passion for self-realization. So this is the story about his, when he was staying in the hermitage, and since then he decided that he now will be independent. A lot of people have done some research as to what do you think Lord Mahavir did for those 12.5 years. When you are in meditation, he's staying there. So what's written in the scripture is that he spent a lot of time in the Kayotsak posture. So when we do Kayotsak, he was in the Kayotsak posture. He was facing the cardinal directions for 12 hours each. So these are some of the things which have been written down. That he would be facing each of the 12 directions and in a lot of meditation. He wanted to get control over food, speech and sleep. He really wanted to do that because every time we sleep, we are not conscious. And if you're not conscious, then you're not in control of yourself. And what is the focus of his meditation? He was contemplating, what is karmas? How can I get rid of my karmas? That's contemplation. Reasons for bondage. Why am I being bound? How do the karmas attach to my soul? The bodies and the chakras. We all believe that the body has got a lot of powers. And if you look at a lot of the saints now, they are actually mapping that when you say that I want to do meditational practices, they are mapping meditational practices with the chakras. And chakras, there's been some research, they are mapping those chakras to endocrine glands of the human body. So if you look at what the Hindus or the Jains believe, that we have got 7 chakras, the chakras in the over here, chakras towards the heart, but they are all associated towards the pineal gland, pituitary glands. So there's research to say that these are the emotions, they are the ones which secrete emotions, and these are the ones which are associated with the chakras. So there's a lot of commonality between spirituality and modern science. He was thinking about gross and subtle. I'm a gross body, but there's also something which is very subtle, which I cannot see. So that constant universe and something very small. Permanence and transience. I think this is the heart of a lot of things. What is permanent? What is transient? And he was observing his soul by inner conscious. So this was a lot of contemplation over the 12.5 years. During the time when he was an ascetic, a sadhu, again, a lot of the devs and devis from heavens used to come and test him. And there are a lot of descriptions of how he was harassed by the Sulapani demon. And they could create huge amount of disturbances. But Bhagavan Mahavir was firm in his resolution. And eventually even the Sulapani then begs for forgiveness, that I'm sorry that I really harassed you. CHANDAKAUSHIK. I mean, most of us know CHANDAKAUSHIK's story. CHANDAKAUSHIK, he was advised, do not go along this forest here. Chandakaushik is a very venomous snake. He bites everyone. Bhagavan Mahaveer goes in the forest, and when he sees Chandakaushik, he just says three things: Bhuj, Bhuj, Bhuj. And obviously, Chandakaushik realized what Bhagavan Mahaveer was saying, which means awaken, be vigilant, wake up, wake up. And through those words, Chandakaushik got sort of, as we call it, his memory of his past births and calmed down. Now let's look at Chandakaushik. What was his past births? Why did Chandakaushik become a snake with such anger? Chandakaushik was actually a monk in his previous life. And as he was going out, he actually crushed a frog. So he had a colleague, another sadhu with him, and saying, oh, it's a lot of mistake. I mean, it's a monsoon season. You went out and we saw a frog being crushed. So his colleague was always hounding him. I think you should repent. You should do pratikaman. And this Chandakaushik's soul says, don't bother me. I know what to do. I'm a monk. I'll know. But this sadhu says, no. He's constantly hounding him. Savar, Bopor, morning, evening, Sanj, every time. Eventually, that guy got really mad. And he then went running after the sadhu. Says, you don't disturb me anymore. Don't tell me what to do. And in that state of anger, he wanted to really beat his colleague sadhu. He tripped over a stone and fell down. So you could imagine he died in a state of rage. He was really wanting to beat his sadhu. That why is he nagging me all the time to repent? I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm old enough to decide what I'm going to do. And that's where he decides, and he starts. That's where he got his karma of intense anger. And then when Chandakaushik realized this, then there was a transformation, and he became very peaceful. There is a book written by Acharya Chandaji. She's called Thus Spoke Mahaveer. And it's quite interesting that Acharya Chandaji, the book she's written, she has described all of Bhagavan Mahaveer's incidences with a view of, let's imagine that we are in Bhagavan Mahaveer's shoes right now. If I was in Bhagavan Mahaveer's shoes right now, what would I be doing? What would I be thinking? How would Bhagavan Mahaveer reacted? And this is what Acharya Chandaji has written about Mahaveer and the cobra. Thus spoke Mahaveer. When I saw the cobra, I was amazed by its smooth and beautiful body. You would actually get worried and scared about a cobra, but here is a person who's got immense compassion, Bhagavan Mahaveer. He was amazed by its smooth and beautiful body, admiration for the snake, by its bright red shining eyes. It was staring at me as well. I sensed it wanted to tell me something. When I offered it my hand of friendship, it smoothly crawled up my arm. I kept on caressing it and it was happy, like a child in mother's lap. I told him gently, welcome my friend, I love you. The cobra told me, we too need love and friendship. We do not bite people just for fun. So you can imagine what compassion Lord Mahaveer has. And that's why when you look at the pictures of Chandakaushik and Lord Mahaveer, as pictorially or symbolically, it's actually shown that blood is oozing out of Bhagavan Mahaveer's feet. So when Chandakaushik is biting Lord Mahaveer, instead of blood coming out, it's actually milk. And that's signifying so that mothers have got such intense feelings for the children, and as they give milk to their child, same with blood is oozing out of Lord Mahaveer's feet. Sangam. Sangam was another dev, and he actually created problems for Lord Mahaveer for 6 months, continuous 6 months of lots of problems, and trying to see if Bhagavan Mahaveer is going to deviate from his practices. And incidentally, Bhagavan Mahaveer cried only once in his life. In his life, he only cried once. He did not cry when his parents died. He did not cry when he had a lot of other pains being created by others. He only cried once in his life. And that was when, after 6 months of giving intense pain to Lord Mahaveer, Sangam is now returning back to Devlok. And Bhagavan Mahaveer opens his eyes up and has 2 or 3 tears in his eyes. Poor soul. What kind of karma has he bound that he's now going to be punished? That I became a nimit. I became instrumental for him binding such karmas that he's going to have a lot of pain. And out of that compassion, 2 or 3 tears came out of Lord Mahaveer's eyes. Just shows that what compassion is. No matter he's like an enemy, he still had compassion for the soul of Sangam. Chandan Bala. We all know the story of Chandan Bala, so I won't dwell upon it. He's fasted for so long, he wants to break his fast, and certain conditions have to be met. And there's Chandan Bala who is kind of in the sort of a slave, and then after the conditions are met, Bhagavan Mahaveer breaks his fast here. Let's look at what is the importance of Chandan Bala's story. There was a time when women were supposed to be kind of a burden to the society. And what women at that stage was, when at birth they are burden to their father, when they get married they are burden to their husband, and in old age they are burden to their children. So this was the concept of what women, the conceptually of what the status of women were in the day and age. Let's look at Cambridge University. Cambridge University did not admit women from 1209 to 1869. Over those many years, women were not educated at Cambridge University. So this is not only Lord Mahaveer's time, but even in the Western society. So here is Lord Mahaveer taking arms from Chandanbala, and it sent a strong message to the entire society prevalent at that stage in time, that women are at the same status as men. And in fact, Chandanbala became the first Sadhvi monk. So as you have an Acharya, she became the first nun to lead Lord Mahaveer's congregation. So that was an immense amount of empowerment he given to Chandanbala. The other important thing to bear in Chandanbala's mind is, and it's quite relevant in today's day and age, Chandanbala was a daughter of a king. The kingdom was attacked. She had to run away with her mother. The mother died en route, and then she was left, like this is Shelly was told about, like an orphan. There she was left all alone, and she was then taken into slavery by some people. Can you imagine the twist of fate? We do not know what's going to happen in our lives. One day you are stuck in a kingdom, in a palace, the next day something else could strike up. It's a very striking example of how someone living in a lap of luxury and in a very, how situations and events can change straight away, similar to what happened in tsunami. So that's again a very important thing to, things just cannot go on. Here is an example. This is showing that Lord Mahaveer is here in the cowherd. Because he was in a state of anger, he is now piercing Lord Mahaveer's ears with those nails. And this shows the karma which Lord Mahaveer bound at the time of the soul where he put the molten lead in. So sort of the karma is coming back. Many people believe sadhana, when you read in scriptures, he did such intense sadhana, is it fact or fiction? And what's important here is a person in deep sadhana, meditational practices, is so detached from his body that the atrocities, calamities, pain and pleasure become distant events for him. These events do not disturb him and cannot distract him from his sadhana. His soul becomes a mere observer and the knower. Even in this day and age, I've read in certain Jain books that Acharya Maharajas of recent age, just a few hundred, 50, 60, 80 years ago, when they had to do some operation, because of the intense meditational practices, they did not even take anesthetics. They said, okay, if I have to go to operation, I'll do it, but I don't need any of this. So the power of the mind is huge. So once when your mind becomes so powerful, then it's quite easy to believe that you are able to cope with all these atrocities. Yeah. After 12 years of sadhana, he gets his Kevalgnan. Again, a very nice place. I mean, these are all events. When we went to the Rajgiri trip, when we went to the India trip, it's a very nice location, where the exact location of where Bhagwan Mahaveer. So the circle there is the exact spot where Bhagwan Mahaveer got Kevalgnan. So that's what they've indicated. And it was by the river of Ruchbalika. So that's when the scripture says that Bhagwan Mahaveer, he was in this posture here. So he was under a tree with both his feet in this posture, with his hands here, and in that state, he actually got Kevalgnan. And there's a beautiful temple erected in Ruchbalika. But after he got Kevalgnan, in his first sermon, there was no one there, only angels. Can you imagine? So when someone gets Kevalgnan, is there some kind of event? How does someone know that, oh yes, I got Kevalgnan? When we go to universities or something, we get a degree. Oh yes, I'm now qualified as a doctor. I can now. But when you get Kevalgnan, how do you advertise to people that here I've now got infinite knowledge. I've got all the knowledge. So the people in the society of that day and age did not know that Bhagwan Mahaveer got Kevalgnan. He did not go advertising everyone, hey guys, I've now got Kevalgnan. So only angels who knew through the power of Bhakti-gnan that Bhagwan Mahaveer is now got Kevalgnan. So in his first sermon, no one there was no humans there. Which is quite a strange thing at that stage. The story of Gautam Swami becoming his first disciple, I mean, that's also, Gautam Swami was a Brahmin. He was getting yagna. They were doing all this fire yagna. And then he actually saw that there were some Devis coming flying in the air, and his pride was amazing. Devis are coming, because I'm a great Vedic monk, and then they're coming obviously to pay respect to me. And when he saw they're going somewhere else, he then said, oh, where are they going to? And then he then decided to follow them. And when he went to Lord Mahaveer's assembly, Mahavir Swami calls Gautam Swami, hey Gautam, come here, you got a doubt in your mind. And Lord Mahaveer actually resolved that doubt, and these monks, they actually had a character. Whenever someone resolved their doubts, they would become their disciples. So that was kind of the characters they had stayed. So he became the first disciple of Lord Mahaveer. Each and every Ganadhar of Bhagwan Mahaveer were Brahmins, and they all had doubts before they became his monks. Indrapati, Gautam Swami, soul does not exist. So even though he was a Brahman, he did not believe in the soul. He just did not believe in the soul. The second Ganadhar, these are the main disciples of Lord Mahaveer. Karma does not exist. The third, and incidentally, Indrapati, Agniputi and Vayubhuti are three brothers. So Gautam Swami and his two brothers, they all became the first Ganadhars of Bhagwan Mahaveer, and they all had doubts. The fourth one, the five basic elements do not exist. Water, air, Sudharma. After death, the living being will have rebirth in the same species. Mandit, the other, bondage and moksha do not exist. So they had all these doubts here. Another important thing to bear in mind is, at Lord Mahaveer's, when Bhagwan Mahaveer himself was on earth, he had 11 disciples. We sometimes complain, oh, London ma aatla bada thai gaye, koi alokane mane chhe, koi alokane mane chhe. There are so many different parts of Jainism here. I mean, who are we to complain? When people are having, as long as the message of Mahavir is being forwarded, there's just no harm. I think there's no exception, or we should not have any objection to people following different paths. Lord Mahavir himself had 11 disciples. So there was no kind of rivalry between them. Each one of them had 500 disciples. Indrapati, Agniputi. So I think we need to have an open mind and saying that yes, I want to listen to Lord Mahavir's message. And don't get it's like, we believing in the basic tenets of Lord Mahavir. This is a very interesting example here. Gautam Swami is actually going across, and he actually sees someone slashing the cows, a farmer. So he goes towards the cow herd and says, please be a bit more gentle to your cows, don't whip your cows. And then he explains that even they've got a soul, and just like you and me, they also feel pain. Then he likes this. He says, I think I'm quite impressed with what you're teaching me. He then decides that I actually want to become a monk like you. I like the way you do. So he says, okay, fine. He then comes and says, rather than becoming a monk with me, why don't you come to Bhagwan Mahaveer? He's my guru. He says, you? I mean, you itself, Gautam Swami, you yourself are like quite impressive. I'm impressed with you, but you also have a guru above you. Well, I think, so yes, Gautam Swami says, I'm in no capacity to make you a disciple. Please come to Lord Mahaveer. My guru will make you a disciple. This person comes to Lord Mahaveer, and as soon as he sees Lord Mahaveer, he runs for his life. Gautam Swami is wondering that he wants to become a sadhu. I brought him to Lord Mahaveer's assembly, and as soon as he sees Lord Mahaveer, he's actually now running away from him. He says, no, I don't want to become a sadhu, and just runs away. Gautam Swami is very confused. He says, what's going on here? That, he then asks Bhagwan Mahaveer, what is going on here? That he wanted to become a daksu, he wanted to become a sadhu, he wanted to take diksha under me, but I told him to come and see you. Lord Mahaveer says, do you remember that my former birth, that when there was a lion and I actually ripped upon his, with my two bare feet? He says, this is that soul here. And you were actually my chariot driver. So you were actually the one who was riding my chariot. And at the time when I was killing the lion, you actually had compassion towards him. So he says, oh, why is this king killing a lion in such a ferocious manner? So this soul of yours, he's attracted towards you. But as soon as he sees me, his past memories actually kindle, and he's feared of me. Is that? So he says that's the reason why he's actually running away from me. He says, don't worry. He says, after a few more births, just the fact that you've met him, he'll become a sadhu later on. But right now, he's not going to become a sadhu under me. His salvation is there for him, but obviously not under me, through someone else. So can you just see that that's also quite common right now, that this shows that some people, just the vibrations, or I like them. Some people, the vibrations, oh, I can't stand these people. So this is nothing something strange, it's just kind of the old baggage which is carrying forward. But this was just an amazing story to see that can you imagine Bhagwan Mahaveer sitting here right now and someone running away from him says, no, I can't stand this person here. Gosala is another story saying that there was his disciple, and then he again became a heretic. he didn't want to. He learned quite a few things, and this is quite a debatable point, because recently I actually went to a lecture at SOAS, School of African and Oriental Studies, and there are some researchers who are actually suggesting that Bhagwan Mahavir was actually a disciple of Gosala. So there's a lot of controversy as to Gosala can scriptures. It's not said. They were saying that Gosala was actually the main teacher and Bhagwan Mahavir was his disciple. But James obviously don't believe in that. He had got a lot of power. He then started using the power against Lord Mahaveer, and obviously Gosala, according to Jain beliefs, then got destroyed. Towards his sadhana, obviously Bhagwan Mahavir then is now getting diksha. So he now is getting moksha. So on Diwali day he then goes to heaven, and the next day Gautam Swami gets Kevalknan. And this is again the temple there, Guniaji, where the actual location where Gautam Swami got Kevalknan. This is the temple which are dedicated in Lord Mahaveer, the Jal Mandir, and this is again the Samvasaran in Pavapuri. And again, as I said, these are the main concepts which come along Lord Mahaveer's Samyak Darshan and Charitra, but the philosophy of Lord Mahaveer we can discuss some other time, but this was in brief about Lord Mahaveer. Yeah, so I think that's today's lecture. Thank you. So these are all the kind of references for this presentation, all the different